There is a simple truth that once seen quietly rearranges the whole structure of your life. It is not dramatic and it does not argue. It waits. Your world is not happening to you. It is happening from you. The circumstances you touch, the people you meet, the patterns that repeat are not moving independently of your inner life. They are responding to it. This is not a metaphor nor a philosophy meant to comfort. It is a law of consciousness. And if you listen without strain, without the need to fix or change anything in this moment, you may notice a gentle stillness arise. For the mind that has been struggling to control the outer world can finally rest when it realizes that the cause has always been within. What you see is not the source. What you are aware of being is the source, and until this is felt rather than merely heard, life will continue to seem unpredictable, unfair, or distant. But when it is felt, even faintly, something softens. You begin to sense that the mirror has been showing you yourself all along. The foundation of this understanding is consciousness itself. Not consciousness as an idea, but as the quiet sense of being aware. Before any thought arises, before any name or role is assumed, there is awareness. That awareness is the only reality. Everything else is an expression shaped within it. When you say, I am, you are touching the most fundamental fact of existence. And what follows those words, silently or aloud, determines the form your world takes. You do not attract experiences as something separate from them. You give them life by consenting to a state of being. The world does not mirror what you want, nor what you ask for, nor even what you think about occasionally. It mirrors what you accept as true of yourself. Most people live as though the outer world is the cause and the inner world is the reaction. They wait for evidence, permission, or improvement before they allow themselves to feel secure, valued, or fulfilled. But this is a reversal of the order of creation. The inner feeling is the cause. The outer scene is the effect. To desire a change in the mirror without changing what stands before it is to struggle endlessly. The mirror has no choice but to reflect what is presented to it. In the same way, the world has no choice but to echo the state of consciousness you occupy. When a desire arises, it is not an accident. It is not a suggestion of something missing, but an invitation to occupy a new state. The moment you say, I want, you are standing outside the state you seek. Wanting is a confession of absence. Fulfillment begins not by reaching for the desire, but by stepping into the feeling of being the one who already is. This is not pretending, it is not visual strain or emotional force. It is a quiet assumption, often so subtle that the mind dismisses it, yet it is the assumption that governs everything. To think from the desire fulfilled means you no longer consult the outer world for confirmation. You do not ask, is it working? Or when will it happen? Those questions belong to the old state. Instead, there is a gentle inner knowing, a calm familiarity, as though what was once desired is now simply part of who you are. You're not excited by it, nor anxious about it. You are at ease. And this ease is the signature of a state accepted as natural. Observe how effortlessly you occupy states you have long accepted. You do not try to be the person you already believe yourself to be. You do not rehearse it. You simply are. The same principle applies to every transformation. The difficulty is not in making the assumption, but in releasing loyalty to the former one. The mind returns again and again to what feels familiar, even when it is uncomfortable. This is why persistence is not effort, but remembrance. You are not fighting the world. You are gently returning to yourself. The mirror responds not to words, but to feeling. Feeling is not emotion, but the sense of reality. It is the inward yes that grants life to an idea. When you inwardly agree that something is true of you, the agreement sets the law in motion. The world rearranges itself around that agreement, not immediately in every case, but inevitably. Delay is not denial. It is often a sign that the old state is still being revisited, still being fed with attention. Attention is the substance of consciousness. Where you place it, you place yourself. When attention rests on what appears to be wrong, absent, or delayed, you are reinforcing the identity of the one who lacks. When attention rests on the quiet sense of being fulfilled, even if the outer world remains unchanged for a time, you are feeding a new self. And the world must follow the self, for it has no independent life. This does not mean you deny appearances or argue with them. You simply stop consulting them as the authority. Appearances are messages from past assumptions. They are echoes, not causes. To react to them emotionally is to renew the state that produced them. To observe them calmly without inner movement is to let them complete their course and dissolve. The mirror can only show what is presently being assumed. Change the assumption, and the reflection must change. There is a great relief in realizing that you do not need to manage life. You do not need to convince anyone, manipulate circumstances, or struggle toward outcomes. Your only responsibility is to be aware of what you are being aware of, to notice the inner conversations you entertain, the quiet statements you accept as fact, the identity you return to when the mind wanders. These are not minor details. They are the creative act itself. When you sit quietly and feel yourself to be the one you desire to be, without images, without effort, without justification, you are standing at the source. You may notice resistance at first, not as something dramatic, but as a tendency to drift back to old stories. This is natural. Do not judge it. Simply return. Each return weakens the old habit and strengthens the new. You are not building something new. You are remembering what you have chosen to be. As this understanding settles, a subtle shift occurs. You begin to see the world differently, not as an enemy or a test, but as a faithful servant. Everything reflects you with absolute honesty. Nothing is personal, yet everything is intimate. And in this recognition, the urgency to change fades. There is time, there is order. There is a quiet intelligence at work that responds perfectly to the state you occupy. Remain with this awareness gently. Let it deepen without pressure. The mirror is already responding, even now, to what you are accepting as true. And as you rest in that knowing without reaching ahead or looking back, you may find that the sense of self begins to soften and expand, preparing you naturally and without strain for a deeper loyalty to the one you are choosing to be. As this understanding matures, it becomes clear that the movement of consciousness is most easily observed in the ordinary moments of the day, not in the quiet hours alone, but in the subtle reactions, the inner comments, the assumptions made without thought. The world speaks constantly, not with words, but with suggestion. And each suggestion asks a simple question of you. Who are you being now? Most answers are given silently, not by deliberate choice, but by habit. This is why the practice of awareness is not an effort added to life, but a gentle attentiveness to the life already unfolding within you. Every inner conversation is a confession of identity. When you speak inwardly to another, you are really speaking to yourself about yourself. The tone you use, the role you assign yourself, the outcome you imagine as natural, all reveal the state you are occupying. These conversations do not need to be corrected with force. They need only to be noticed. Awareness alone begins to loosen their hold. For the moment you see a thought as something you are entertaining rather than something you are, you regain the freedom to choose again. Persistence in this light is not repetition of words or scenes, but fidelity to a feeling of being. It is loyalty to an assumption, even when the senses argue otherwise. The senses are faithful reporters, but they report only what has already been impressed upon consciousness. They cannot testify to what is being assumed now, for that belongs to a deeper level. To look to them for reassurance is to ask yesterday to confirm today. Instead, you quietly persist by returning to the inner atmosphere that feels like fulfillment. However, softly it may be felt at first. There will be moments when the old state seems to reclaim you. A remark from another, a memory, a delay, and suddenly the familiar feeling returns. This is not failure. It is simply momentum. States have weight because they have been lived in. Do not struggle against this return. Struggle grants it importance. Instead, withdraw attention. Let the feeling be present without identification. You are not required to react to every inner movement. You are free to let it pass like a cloud moving across the sky of awareness. The key is to understand that consciousness does not change by argument, but by acceptance. You do not persuade yourself into a new state. You yield into it. You allow yourself to feel natural in a new identity. Naturalness is the measure of belief. When something feels natural, it no longer requires effort to sustain. It simply is. This is why imagining is not about vivid pictures or emotional intensity. It is about familiarity. The mind accepts what feels familiar as true, and what it accepts as true becomes visible in the world. Daily life offers endless opportunities to test this law quietly. When a situation arises that once would have triggered reaction, notice what happens when you remain inwardly unmoved. When you hear something you would once have resisted, notice the power in remaining neutral. Neutrality is not indifference, it is confidence. It is the quiet knowledge that what matters is not the passing scene, but the state from which you observe it. As you persist, something subtle but profound occurs. The desire that once felt like something ahead of you begins to feel like something within you. It no longer pulls your attention forward. It settles. It becomes part of your inner landscape. You stop thinking about it as a future event and begin to experience it as a present quality of being. This is the point at which the outer world begins to shift, often in ways so natural that they feel almost unnoticed. Faith in this teaching is not belief in a distant power. It is trust in your own awareness. It is the confidence that what you assume inwardly must express outwardly, because there is no other creative cause. Faith does not demand proof. It rests. And this rest is not passive. It is alive, alert, and quietly certain. When you rest in an assumption, you stop interfering with its unfolding. Interference often comes disguised as concern. Concern appears reasonable, even responsible, but concern is simply attention given to what you do not want. It is the old state seeking nourishment. To withdraw concern is not to become careless. It is to become precise. You learn to give your attention only to what you choose to make real. This does not require vigilance every moment, but a growing preference for inner peace over inner commentary. You may notice that as this preference develops, the world seems to soften its grip on you. Situations that once felt heavy lose their weight. Opinions of others matter less, not because you dismiss them, but because they no longer define you. You begin to sense a quiet authority within yourself, not asserted, not defended, but simply present. This authority comes from knowing that the mirror must obey the one who stands before it. The practice, if it can be called that, becomes simpler over time. You no longer ask how to do it. You simply notice when you have slipped into a state that does not serve you, and you gently return. Return to the feeling of being grounded, complete, and at ease. Return to the identity that feels expansive rather than contracted. This return may happen many times a day, and each time it happens without judgment, its power increases. Eventually, you begin to live more from the inside than from the outside. You listen more to your inner sense than to external noise. Decisions arise naturally, actions flow without strain, and even when challenges appear, they no longer threaten your sense of self. They are seen as movements within the mirror, temporary and informative, but never final. Stay with this understanding quietly. Let it accompany you through the unnoticed moments of the day. For it is in these moments that the state is truly chosen, and it is from these moments that the world continues to faithfully reflect the image you are consenting to be. As this way of living settles into you, something gently releases its grip. The effort to manage the inner life begins to fade, not because attention is lost, but because identity has stabilized. You are no longer watching yourself as closely, no longer correcting or adjusting as often, because the state you have chosen is becoming your home. What once required remembrance now feels ordinary. And it is this ordinariness that signals embodiment. The mind has ceased to argue, the heart has ceased to reach. There is a quiet agreement within you, and life responds to agreement far more readily than it ever responds to effort. At this stage, surrender takes on a new meaning. It is not giving up desire, nor relinquishing control to something outside yourself. It is the surrender of resistance to being. You allow yourself to be what you have assumed without apology, without explanation, without waiting. You stop asking whether you are doing it correctly. You stop measuring your inner state. You simply live. And in living from this place, you discover that fulfillment does not feel like attainment. It feels like recognition. Identity is the deepest form of prayer. You are always declaring yourself, even in silence. The world listens to this declaration and arranges itself accordingly. When identity is unstable, the world appears inconsistent. When identity is settled, the world becomes predictable, gentle, and often surprisingly kind. Not because circumstances are controlled, but because your relationship to them has been transformed. You no longer meet life as a petitioner. You meet it as the one from whom meaning flows. There is a great stillness that accompanies this stabilization. Thoughts continue to arise, but they no longer carry the same authority. Emotions still move, but they no longer define you. You remain aware of them without being absorbed by them. This awareness is not distant or cold. It is intimate and present. It is the awareness that knows itself as the source, not the product, of experience. In this stillness, imagination functions differently. It is no longer used to create change, but to express being. Images may arise naturally, not to persuade the mind, but as gentle confirmations of what is already accepted. You do not hold them, you do not repeat them. You allow them to come and go, knowing that the state does not depend on them. The state is self-sustaining because it has been claimed. What once felt like discipline now feels like ease. You are not reminding yourself to think from fulfillment. You are simply noticing when something feels out of harmony with who you are, and you let it pass. This letting pass is not suppression. It is indifference born of confidence. You have found something more solid than reaction. You have found your center. The outer world in time aligns with this center. Not dramatically, not all at once, but with a quiet inevitability. People respond differently. Opportunities appear without effort. Old problems dissolve without confrontation. And when new challenges arise, they are met with curiosity rather than fear. You trust the movement of life because you trust the state from which you are meeting it. There is no need to announce this change either to yourself or to others. True embodiment is silent. It does not seek recognition. It does not compare. It simply is. And because it is, it allows others the freedom to be as they are without resistance. This alone brings a profound peace. For conflict is born of inner division, and division cannot survive in a settled state. As you continue, you may notice moments where the old identity tries to reassert itself, usually in times of fatigue or distraction. These moments no longer disturb you. They are recognized as echoes, not threats. You do not follow them, you do not analyze them, you remain where you are. And in remaining, you teach consciousness a new habit, one of rest. Rest is the final movement of creation. When you rest in a state, it completes itself. There is nothing left to do because doing belongs to the one who doubts. Being belongs to the one who knows. And knowledge, in this sense, is not information. It is familiarity. You are familiar with yourself as fulfilled, as whole, as grounded. The mirror has adjusted accordingly, and it continues to adjust moment by moment with perfect accuracy. Let this understanding remain with you gently. There is no finish line to cross, no peak to reach. There is only a deepening comfort with being the one you have chosen to be. And in this comfort, life unfolds with a natural grace, responding faithfully to the quiet, settled awareness that now stands before the mirror, unhurried, unchallenged, and at ease.